When people think about the fall of Rome, they usually imagine barbarians smashing the gates, legions collapsing, or emperors being poisoned in their palaces. But empires don't fall just because of external attacks. They rot from within. And one of the most corrosive forces in that internal decay is always money. Rome didn't fall just because of invasions or corruption. It fell because its currency collapsed. And the lessons from that collapse are still relevant for any modern economy that thinks it can play games with money and get away with it. Let's set the stage. 4 centuries, Rome's economic backbone was the silver denarius. First minted around 201 BC, this coin was nearly pure silver and trusted both within and beyond the empire. Roman soldiers were paid in it. Merchants demanded it. Ordinary people stored their wealth in it. The denarius was not just currency, it was trust in metal form. The power of the empire and the value of the coin were intertwined. As long as people believed in Rome, they believed in its money. But running an empire is expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts built, wars financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was struggling to defend its borders against Germanic tribes, Parthians in the east, and unrest at home. Tax revenues couldn't keep up with military spending. So emperors resorted to an old trick, debasement. Inflation followed. Prices rose because money was no longer anchored to real value. This wasn't just theory, it ruined the lives of ordinary Romans. Soldiers demanded higher pay to cover rising costs. Merchants refused the debased coins, preferring barter or gold. Local economies reverted to direct trade because currency could no longer be trusted. And the more confidence eroded, the more emperors minted cheaper coins, hoping volume would replace value. This vicious cycle repeated in countless inflation crises afterward. The crisis peaked during what is known as the 3rd century crisis. Between AD 235 and 284, Rome endured nearly 50 years of chaos, invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors rose and fell at dizzying speed, some reigning only months before being assassinated. Behind the political drama was a broken financial system. Taxes were collected in coins that were increasingly worthless. Farmers abandoned their lands rather than pay. Trade networks fractured, and the Roman government resorted to desperate measures, from price controls to forced labor obligations, to keep the system afloat. None of it worked. One emperor, Diocletian, tried to stop the bleeding. In AD 301, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, setting the cost of thousands of goods and services, from grain to labor wages. Violators faced death. The edict was a disaster. When the money itself was worthless, prices could not be controlled by decree. The black market exploded, and official trade almost collapsed. People quickly learned that the law cannot fix broken money. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius entirely. Constantine the Great, around AD 312, introduced the solidus, a gold coin of consistent purity. It restored some stability and lasted for centuries in the Eastern Roman, Byzantine Empire. But by then, the Western Empire was already fatally weakened. The devaluation of the denarius had hollowed out Rome's economic core. Armies could no longer be maintained. Trade networks were broken. Trust was gone. The fall of Rome was not a single event, but a long unraveling. Currency collapse was one of its sharpest threads. So what does this teach us today? That the destruction of a currency is the destruction of an empire. Rome thought it could trick its people by issuing coins that looked the same but had less real value. Modern governments think they can do the same, printing money, manipulating interest rates, inflating away debts. But the outcome is always the same. The people pay the price, wealth is destroyed, and trust collapses. Rome learned this lesson the hard way. And if we ignore it, we will too. History did not stop after Rome. Every major inflation crisis since has repeated the same pattern. Governments debase money to cover their costs, elites protect themselves with real assets, and ordinary people are left impoverished. Rome's currency crisis is simply the earliest full-scale example, a blueprint for collapse. Fast forward a century. After World War I, Germany faced crushing reparations under the Treaty of Versailles. The government printed marks to cover its obligations, just as Rome once minted more coins. By 1923, hyperinflation was raging. A loaf of bread that had cost 1 mark before the war now cost 200 billion marks by year's end. People carried their wages in wheelbarrows. And as in Rome, those with debts saw them wiped out, while those with real assets, land, factories, foreign currency, emerged stronger. Money became meaningless. Economic despair fueled political extremism, paving the way for Hitler's rise. Zimbabwe followed the same path in the early 2000s. Facing land seizures, declining production, and rising debts, the government turned to the printing press. By 2008, inflation reached an astonishing 89.76 million% annually. Prices doubled daily. Shops couldn't change tags fast enough. Eventually, Zimbabwe abandoned its currency entirely, forcing citizens to trade in US dollars or South African rand. You don't even need to look at extremes. The Roman pattern lives on in modern developed economies. Take the United States. In 1971, President Richard Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. From that moment, the dollar became what economists call fiat currency, backed not by gold but by trust in the government. And as in Rome, the temptation to spend beyond means became irresistible. In the following decades, debt ballooned, the money supply expanded, and inflation became a constant undercurrent. We may not see wheelbarrows full of cash, but purchasing power steadily erodes. A dollar in 1971 bought what costs more than $6 today. The coins look the same, the bills look the same, but their value has been hollowed out. The trick is always the same: governments disguise inflation as growth. Citizens are told that rising wages mean prosperity, even as costs rise faster. Debt is presented as investment, even when funding mere consumption. Stock market gains are touted as proof of wealth, even when the majority own little or no shares. Like Roman emperors, they pretend nothing fundamental has changed, quietly extracting value from every coin, bill, and paycheck. What makes this dangerous today is scale. Rome's collapse was an imperial crisis. Germany's hyperinflation was national. Zimbabwe's was local. Today, the whole world runs on fiat currencies, massive debts, and central banks ready to print trillions at the first sign of trouble. That means the next collapse won't be confined to a single empire or country, it will ripple globally. And history shows us who suffers, not the elites with assets, but the millions relying on salaries, pensions, and savings denominated in increasingly fragile currencies. So what lessons can you take from Rome's currency crisis? Inflation is never accidental. It is policy, a silent tax that has broken empires for 2,000 years. Never assume stability is permanent. Romans in the 1st century would have laughed at the idea their coins could one day be worthless. Germans in 1913 couldn't imagine wheelbarrows of cash. Zimbabweans in the 1980s believed independence meant prosperity. Yet in each case, the same story repeated. And here's the punchline: history doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you just the same. Rome's currency crisis wasn't just about bad emperors or greedy elites. It was about the fragility of money when abused by power. And that fragility has never gone away. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History gives answers. If you want, I can also make this more conversational and YouTube-friendly, so it sounds like a presenter speaking directly to the audience. That usually makes it more engaging for viewers. Do you want me to do that?